I live in a modest house on the outskirts of town, with peeling windows and a roof that speaks more to the rain than to me. The house, once full of laughter, now only creaks in the wind. It seems to be begging to be left alone, just like me. My children live in the city, upper class, successful, confident. My son Richard is a lawyer, my daughter Martha has her own beauty salon. They have everything: cars, apartments, vacations. And I have a calendar on the wall with the days they promise to come circled. Promises fade faster than ink. Grandchildren. I used to carry them on my shoulders, showing them how to chop wood, how to keep their word. Now, when I call, the dry voice of an auto-informer answers. If they do come, they look at me as if I were a museum exhibit that smells of mothballs and the past. The cold in their eyes is colder than a January night. The store is my only social contact. The saleswoman looks through me as if I were a ghost. When I count pennies on the counter, they sigh behind me, "Come on, Grandpa." In the hospital, it's even worse. Young doctors, with smartphones in their hands, don't listen to what I say. After all, they know better, and I'm just another old man. I keep quiet. But inside, a deaf emptiness grows. Like mold, it creeps along the walls of my soul. Sometimes it seems that the air in the room is thick with silence. The old radio plays classical music, the only thing that still acknowledges my age. I wake up every day at 6:15, as before, a habit from the days when I ran the company. But now no one needs my routine. No one expects my decisions. I'm a shadow. All the decisions have already been made without me. I sit on a bench by the window and watch other people's children run down the street. Their laughter is like a fire I can no longer touch. I listen to the wind singing in the branches like an old friend. Only it still remembers my name. Occasionally I write in my diary. A date, an observation, a short line. As if I leave a trace. Although someone will be interested in how a person disappears. Not physically, morally. But the most terrible thing is not loneliness. It is indifference. The world moves forward, erasing my name, my deeds, my honor. Once I was a source of strength. Now I am a source of inconvenience. And if pain could once be drowned out by pride, now only silence remains. But silence, it listens. And it remembers. I remember that dawn when I stood barefoot in the garage and held my first contract in my hands. Grease under my nails, 3 days without sleep, and the first breakthrough. Back then, I still believed that honesty, work and a man's word meant more than any ties. And, you know what? Back then, it was true. I built my business from scratch. Literally, from dust and a wooden table, where I drew diagrams at night and counted every penny. The business was not big, but it was mine. I did not betray, did not lie. People trusted me like a brother. And I never allowed myself to let any of them down. The first truck with my company logo, I remember standing and watching it drive out of the yard. As if my son was setting off on a journey. That was the beginning. After my Maria died. God took her too soon. I was left with 2 children. I raised them alone. Without tears, without regret. I taught them that family is sacred. That a man should keep his word. That weakness is not shameful if you don't hide it behind lies. I remember when Richard, my son, was sick with pneumonia for a week. I sat by his bed, reading him stories, and worked during the day, not closing my eyes. Martha was afraid of the dark. I turned on the flashlights all over the hallway so that she could sleep. I sold part of the business to pay for their education. It was important to me that they had a chance at a better life than mine. I gave them everything: money, time, strength, love. I didn't even notice how I stopped living for myself. And I also remember the war. Not the one they write about in the newspapers. My own. The war with alcohol. With despair. With the emptiness that appeared after the death of my wife. Long nights alone. The temptation to escape into the bottle was great, and I fell. But then I got up. Not for myself, for them. Every night I repeated it like a mantra, they must have a father. A real one. And then everything changed. When I stopped, the world moved on. Without me. My business was bought out, the brand disappeared. My children grew up and dissolved in the clouds of their worries. They no longer needed my shoulder. Only my silence. After retirement, I expected at least a little warmth. Thanks, a look, how are you, Dad? But I received only polite indifference. Birthday presents are cards bought at the last minute. They don't know what color my eyes are. I read the newspapers and see the names of new leaders. They don't know that I was once one of those who were listened to. My word mattered. My name sounded in the offices. Now, I am silent. But in my head I still remember how to hold a punch. And better yet, how to deliver one. I began to jot down memories in my journal. Not for history. For myself. To remember who I was and who I was made to be. It's all there, the names of those who rose because of me, and those who turned away. Ink doesn't lie. It's more accurate than any memory. These pages smell of smoke, not of fire, but of the past. And with each line I understand more clearly, I wasn't just a businessman. I was a warrior. And old age doesn't erase strength. It shapes it. Old age didn't break me. Indifference broke me. It started with small but burning things. My son called one day. No, he didn't. His secretary. She said he would be busy for the next few weeks, but he's sending his regards. I listened to her cold, mechanical voice and clenched the receiver so hard that my fingers cracked. He's sending his regards. I was somehow sending him my life. My daughter arrived with her grandchildren. I set the table, cooked borscht, made my favorite meat pies, just like before. But they didn't even get out of the car. They just shouted through the open window, "We were in a hurry, Dad, we'll just pick up the documents from the apartment." I went out onto the porch, and they had already left. The borscht had cooled on the table. As had I. I tried to talk to my grandson. I asked him to help carry the bag of groceries. He glared at me with poorly concealed disgust. "Seriously, Grandpa? It's 20 meters. You can't do it yourself?" I didn't answer. I just took the bag. And I also threw his words, like a burden, onto my shoulders. But they hurt more. At the hospital, I was sitting in line, waiting for the doctor to finish his phone conversation. "How old are you?" he asked, without even looking up. 78. "So what do you want?" "At your age, everything is already wearing out." Wearing out. Like an old tire. Like a blinking light bulb. Like me. I came home. I sat down at the table. I pulled out my diary. I wrote the date. Names. Circumstances. Briefly, clearly. Like a protocol. Because each such case is a small death. A small grave that I bury within myself. Schemes appear on the pages. Connected names, events. Not as revenge, as a fixation of justice. They don't yet know that their every word echoes. In me. And then that scene happened. I was coming back from the pharmacy. My hands were shaking, the plastic bags were dragging me to the ground. One tore, the bottle with the medicine rolled across the asphalt, and I fell to my knees. A couple of young guys were walking by. One looked, smiled and said, "Well, Grandpa, the bargain hunt didn't work out." The other added, "What does he want? It's time for him to go to the ground, and he's still wandering around here." They left, laughing. And I was left standing, with dirt on my knee, with a torn bag, with the medicine that had cracked. But that wasn't the worst. The worst was the looks around. People walked by. Some turned away. Others just stared. Like a dog that had run out onto the road. I got up. Slowly. When my vision cleared, I was no longer the same. Something old, deep, forgotten had awakened. Perhaps it had slept for years, like a beast in a nest. But now it had raised its head. No anger. No tears. Just cold clarity. The silence at home was no longer empty. It had become dense, saturated. Like before a storm. The walls seemed to listen as I stopped breathing like a victim. I sat in the dark, a diary in front of me. The pages were no longer memories. They had become a map. A plan. A sentence. They had taught me to be silent. Now I would make them listen to the silence. After that day on the street, I came home and for the first time I didn't feel any shame. Only the cold. Not the one that seeps through my jacket, but the one that lives inside, behind my eyes. I sat in the kitchen, looking at my hands. The same ones that once built, created, hugged. Now they were calm. As if waiting for an order. Everything in me had changed. I stopped waiting. For the first time in many years, I didn't care who would call, who would come. I knew, no one. But it didn't hurt me anymore. Because pain is still life. And what I felt was something deeper, more silent. Like the calm before a storm, when the birds fall silent. I took the diary and looked through the pages. Dozens of names. Children, grandchildren, a doctor, even a saleswoman from a store. Everyone who passed me by was like passing a stone. I reread the names, and with each line a sense of justice awoke in me. Not anger, justice. Like when I ran a business and saw who was betraying whom. I could spot weak spots. And now I saw them all again. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. The silence around me seemed to answer me, leaning over my shoulder. I remembered old skills, not physical ones, but those that shaped the game. Manipulation, strategy, a delicate touch on someone else's conscience. I knew how people worked. And how easily they crumbled if you touched the right crack. I started small. A phone call at the right moment. An anonymous letter, information found accidentally. I knew where to look. All my life I had worked with people who held the world by the threads. Former colleagues, old connections, archives. The world had not forgotten me, it just did not expect me to still be able to play. My son received a copy of an old contract in the mail, in which one very unpleasant detail about his company surfaced. His partner suspected betrayal. I didn't interfere, I just watched them argue. My daughter Marta suddenly got a message that her salon was having problems with its tax documents. Not fatal, but enough to turn her friends away. She called me, for the first time in 6 months. I didn't answer. And my grandson? He was the one who laughed at me. I knew he was playing the stock market. One word in the right place, and he invested in a dubious company. He lost money. His voice, when he called his mother in despair, I could hear it, even though no one called me. All this was no accident. It was a lesson. And while they were fussing, I just sat by the window, drinking tea, and watching the autumn fogs fall on the street. The silence was different. Not oppressive. Alive. It breathed with me. No one saw me. I became part of the background, as always. But now it was the background that controlled the scene. Their destinies began to unravel one by one, like the threads of an old sweater. And no one suspected that it was me. They were used to not noticing me, and now it had become their blindness. Sometimes, when I heard the wind at night, it seemed to me that it was Maria talking to me. Her voice whispered softly, "Why, Jonas?" And I answered in my mind, "No why." For what? I didn't scream, I didn't take revenge with my hands. I simply returned his own face to the world. Without a mask. Without a smile. And, you know, the scariest thing. I felt light. Too light. The world didn't notice when I entered the game. Because no one was looking my way. And that's where my strength lies. I wasn't a hero. And I didn't become a monster. I became a reflection. Of each of them. My son Richard is a brilliant lawyer, building his career on the image of a steadfast, honest professional. But all I had to do was give the right people a hint, and his clients started asking questions. His reputation was shaken. His marriage was cracked. And he, accustomed to control, found himself in chaos. Exactly how I felt when he turned his back on me. He became a child lost in a night apartment again. And then, he called. I picked up the phone, was silent. And only when he said, "Dad. I'm scared," did I hang up. Not out of revenge. But so that he could hear himself in the silence. Martha, my daughter. She never paid attention to the little things, only to the shop windows. I sent her a client, an old friend of my Maria's, who said everything that Marta had once silently ignored, what it's like to be a daughter when your father is dying and you're silent. These words weren't screams. They were a mirror. And when Marta arrived the next day, I didn't open it. Let her stand in the cold, as I stood in her life. And my grandson. A guy with a mind but no soul. I sent him a letter. Not with threats. But with the truth. Photos, memories, old childhood drawings that he once gave me. And a postscript, I'm not angry. I'm just not a part of you anymore. I didn't break a single window. I didn't set fire to a single car. I just touched what they were hiding from themselves. And that turned out to be enough. The results? Coincidences. That's what they thought. But in my diary, everything was recorded. Day, action, consequence. Every stroke, with the precision of a surgeon. And no one saw the scalpel in my hand. Because it was made of words. Looks. Truth. And what's interesting, I didn't feel joy. There was no euphoria. There was a silent ending. Like when a switch clicks. The light goes out, and you just leave. Now the house is silent again, but differently. It is filled with respect. Not fear. My children come. One by one, hesitantly. Not out of fear of losing an inheritance, but out of fear of losing themselves. And I see how they change. Slowly, hard. But they change. They no longer speak quickly. They listen. They look into my eyes. And I let them be. Without punishment. Because the lesson is already learned. Now, when I go to the pharmacy, the saleswoman asks, "How are you, Mr. Jonas?" And the doctor, a new, young one, sits opposite, listens. And even writes something down. I haven't become famous. I haven't become a hero. But I'm no longer invisible. I'm sitting on a bench in front of the window. The autumn sun is breaking through the branches. In my hands is my diary. The last entry, I didn't win. I reminded you. And that's enough. Because old age is not a shadow. It's the last light before the night. The purest. The most honest. And if it looks, you have to look back. No one thanked me. And you shouldn't. I didn't do it for them. I did it for myself. To regain dignity. To prove, silence can be loud. And old age is dangerous. And when my last day comes, I'll go out to meet it with a straight look. Because now I'm me again.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.